I'm Joe Bev, and this is the Joe Bev Show. This time on the Joe Bev Show, Laurel and Hardy in part 1 of The Courtship of Miles Standish, W.C. Fields tells some stories, and Brute Ballingham Chapter 9, Lady Up a Creek. Coming up on the Joe Bev Show. (1620) Late autumn. The sour-livered shores of America. Breaking waves dashing too high on a stern and rock-bound coast. Woods tossing giant branches planlessly against a stormy sky. Cape Cod Bay, wet and full of codfish. The codfish, wet and full of bones. Standing on the deck of the anchored Mayflower, gazing reflectively at the shores of the New World, is Priscilla Kennicott, a youthful bride on a ship full of pilgrims, a lily floating in a dish of prunes, echoes en phase in a cargo of oil cans. Her husband joins her. Together they go forward to where their fellow pilgrims are preparing to embark in small boats. Priscilla jumps into the bow of the first of these to shove off. As the small craft bumps the shore, Priscilla rises joyously. She stretches her hands in ecstasy toward the New World. She leans forward against the breeze, her whole figure alive with the joy of expectant youth.
Yippee!
She leaps with an irrepressible yippee from the bow to the shore. She remains for an instant a vibrant pagan, drunk with the joy of life. Pan posed for an unforgettable moment on Plymouth Rock. The next minute her foot slips on the hard, wet, unyielding stone. She clutches desperately. She slides slowly back into the cold, chill saltness of Cape Cod Bay. She is pulled, dripping and ashamed, into the boat. She crouches there, shivering and hopeless. She hears someone whisper, "Pride goeth before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." And then a coarse, mirthless chuckle. The pilgrims disembark. Plymouth, a year later, night. She lay sleepless on her bed. She heard the outside door open. Kennicott returning from prayer meeting? He sat down on the bed and began pulling off his boots. She knew that the left boot would stick. She knew exactly what he would say and how long it would take him to get it off. She rolled over in bed, a tactical movement which left no blanket for her husband. "Ach, you weren't at the prayer meeting?"
Oh, I had a headache.
"Miles Standish was telling me what you did today at the meeting of the Jolly 17. Ah, these boots. Off at last."
That was kind of Miles. Oh, dear. Oh, my. What charming story did he tell this time?
"Now look here, Prissy. Miles Standish isn't given to fabrication. He said that you told the Jolly 17 that next Thanksgiving they ought to give a dance instead of an all-day prayer service."
Oh, what else did he say? Well, anything else?
"You might at least leave me a piece of bedsheet, woman. He said you suggested that they arrange a series of lectures on the modern religions and invite Quakers and other radicals to speak right here in Plymouth and tell us all about their beliefs. And not only that, but he said you suggested sending a message to the Roman Catholic exiles from England, inviting them to make their home with us. Oh, you must have made quite a little speech.
Well, this is the land of religious freedom, isn't it? That's what you came here for, didn't you?
Ah, you're only giving me 7/8 of the bed covering. Now look here, Prissy. I'm not narrow like some of these pilgrims who came over with us. But I won't let my wife intimating that a Roman Catholic or a Quaker should be allowed to spread his heresies broadcast in this country. It's all right for you and me to know something about those things, but we must protect our children and those who have not had our advantages. The only way to meet this evil is to stamp it out, quick, before it can get a start. And it's just such so-called broad-minded thinkers as you that encourage these heretics. You'll be criticizing the Bible next, I suppose.
Thus, in the early times, did the pious right thinkers save the land from hellfire and damnation. Thus, the great-grandfathers of Middle Western congressmen. Thus, the ancestors of platitudinous editorial writers, sitters on committees, and tin horn prohibitionists. Kennicott got up to cool his wrath and indignation with a drink of water. He stumbled over a chair, reached for a jug, took a drink, stumbled over the same chair, and crawled into bed.
Give me some covers, woman.
His expectation cost him the loss of all bed covering. He gave up the fight.
Aside from dragging your own private views over the coals of your righteousness, did you and your friends find anything equally pleasant and self-satisfying to discuss this evening?
What's that? Why, yes, we did. We decided to refuse permission for any of these traveling medicine shows to operate in Plymouth.
Medicine shows?
You know, like a fair in England. This one claims to come from down south somewhere. Smart Set Medicine Show, it's called, and run by a fella named Mencken. Sells cheap whiskey to the Indians. Makes them crazy, they say. Is another one of your radical friends we don't want around.
Yes, he might cut in on your own trading with the Indians.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, Prissy, hire a hole.
Silence. He began to snore. She lay there, sleepless and open-eyed. The clock struck 11.
Oh dear, why can't I sleep? Did Will put the cat out? I wonder what this medicine show is like. What is the matter with these people? Or is it me?
She reached down, pulled the blankets from under her, spread them carefully over the sleeping Kennicott, patting them down affectionately. The next day she learned what the medicine show was like. She also learned what was the matter with the pilgrims. Morning, a foghorn blowing unceasingly. At breakfast, Kennicott pointed with his fork in the direction of the persistent sound.
There's your Smart Set Medicine Show. He doesn't seem to care much whether we give him a permit or not. Well, we'll have to let him stay. Won't do to have the Indians down on us. But I tell you this, Priscilla, I don't want you to go.
But Will...
Prissy, please. I'm sorry I said what I did last night. I was tired. But don't you see? Well, I can't just exactly explain, but this foghorn sort of scares me. I don't like it.
He suddenly rose and put both hands on her shoulders. He looked into her eyes. He leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. He picked up his hat and was gone. It was 5 minutes before Priscilla noticed that his breakfast had been left untouched. A foghorn, sounding unceasingly. She listlessly put away the breakfast dishes. She tried to drown out the sound by singing.
Honolulu, baby, where'd you get those eyes? And the dark complexion I just idolize. Honolulu, baby, yap-da-dee-da-da.
She fell to her knees and tried to pray. She found her prayers keeping time to the rise and fall of the notes of that horn. She determined to go out in the air, to find her husband, to go to church, anywhere, as far as possible from the Smart Set Medicine Show. So she went out the back door and ran as fast as she could toward the place from which came the sound of the foghorn. An open space on the edge of the forest. In the center of the clearing, a small, gaudily painted tent. Seated on the ground in a semicircle before the tent, some 40 or 50 Indians. Standing on a box before the entrance to the tent, a man of 25 or 50. In his left hand he holds a foghorn, in his right a stein of beer. He puts the horn to his lips and blows a heavy blast. He bellows.
Beauty! 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 Excuse me.
He takes a drink of beer. He repeats this performance 9 times. He takes up some mud and deftly models the features of several well-known characters, statesmen, writers, critics. In many cases, the resemblance is so slight that Priscilla can hardly recognize the character. He picks up a heavy club and proceeds to beat each one of his modeled figures into a pulp.
Take that! Take that! And this! I'm gonna take that!
The Indians applaud wildly. He pays no attention to this applause. He clears his throat and begins to speak.
You took the very words right out of my mouth. Thank you very much.
Priscilla is so deafened by the roar of his voice that she cannot hear what he says.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado,
Apparently he is introducing somebody named George. George steps out of the tent, but does not bow to the audience. In one hand he carries a fencing foil, well constructed, of European workmanship. In his other hand he holds a number of pretty toy balloons, which he has made himself. He smiles sarcastically, tosses the balloons in the air, and cleverly punctures them one by one with his rapier. At each pop, the announcer blows a loud blast from the foghorn. When the last balloon has been punctured, George retires without acknowledging the applause of the Indians. The next act is announced as Helen of Troy in 6 Minutes of Beauty. Priscilla learns from the announcer that This Little Lady is Out of Irony by Theodore Drescher.
Already, Helen? This is Helen. Come on out, Helen.
The little lady appears. She is somewhat over 6 feet in height and built like a boilermaker. She is dressed in pink tights. 6 Minutes of Beauty begins when Helen picks up 3 iron cannonballs and juggles them. She tosses them in the air and catches them cleverly on the back of her neck. The next 6 minutes are brought to a successful conclusion when Helen, hanging head downward by 1 foot from a trapeze, balances a lighted lamp on the other foot and plays Beethoven's Fifth Symphony on the slide trombone. Next, John Alden and Miles Standish put on a pre-prepared, a not unfunny skit and mesmerized Priscilla.
Boop boop be doop.
You'll pardon me. I have to go ride my bike to nowhere. Standish? Yes, Ollie? What are you doing? Well, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm pedaling me bike backwards. Whatever for? Well, this way when I finish, I'll be at the beginning, so I won't be so tired. You know, I think you've got something there.
Oh, that wrecking ball!
I'm gonna get out of here! I'll ride the bike! Get off the bike! Let's go! Come on, Miss Bush!
The announcer then begins his lecture.
And now, ladies and germs, it's time for Dr. Mencken. Dr. Mencken!
Priscilla has by this time gotten used to the overpowering roar of his voice.
Well,
And she discovers that once this difficulty is overcome, she is tremendously impressed by his words.
This is Dr. What happened? Oh, wait a minute. I'm Dr. Mencken.
She becomes more and more attracted to the man.
You should try this, Dr. Mencken's medicine.
She listens, fascinated, as his lecture draws to a close.
It's medicine, and it's by Dr. Mencken.
And he offers his medicine for sale.
Get yours right now. Come on and get it. Everybody, come and get you, Dr. Mencken.
She presses forward through the crowd of Indians surrounding the stand. She reaches the tent. She gives her coin and receives in return a bottle. She hides it in her cape and hurries home. She slips in the back way. She pours some of the medicine into a glass. She drinks. A terrible, overwhelming nausea. Vomiting, which lasts for agonizing minutes, leaving her helpless on the floor. Then cessation. Then light. Then blinding light. At 3:10, Priscilla drank the Mencken medicine. At 3:12, she was lying in agony on the floor. At 3:20, she opened her eyes. At 3:21, she walked out of her front door. At 3:22, she discovered what was wrong with Plymouth and the Pilgrims. Main Street, straight and narrow. A Puritan thoroughfare in a Puritan town. The church, the center of Puritan worship. The shrine of a narrow theology which persistently repressed beauty and joy and life. The Miles Standish house, the house of a Puritan. A squat, unlovely symbol of repression. Beauty crushed by morality. Plymouth Rock, hard, unyielding, like the Puritan moral code. A huge tombstone on the grave of Pan. She fled home. She flung herself sobbing on the bed. She cried,
Oh, they're all Oh, Puritans! Oh, dear! Oh, my! Oh, that's what they are! Oh, Puritans! Oh.
After a while she slept, her cheeks flushed, her heart beating unnaturally. Late that night, she opened her eyes. She heard men's voices. She felt her heart still pounding within her at an alarming rate.
And I told them then that it would come to no good end. Truly the Lord does not countenance such joking.
She recognized the voices of Miles Standish and Elder Brewster.
Well, you see, Henry Haydock, I think that's his name, he got some of this Mencken's medicine from one of the Indians, and he thought it would be a good joke to put it in the broth at the church supper this evening.
Yes?
Well, he did it, the fool, and when the broth was served, hell on earth broke loose. I want to tell you. Everyone started calling his neighbor a Puritan and cursing him for having banished beauty from the earth. They certainly did. I don't know what they meant by it. Lord knows what they meant by it. I don't. Old friends fought like wildcats, shrieking Puritan at each other. Luckily, it only got to one table. But there are 10 raving lunatics in the lockup tonight. It's an awful thing. But thanks to the Lord, some good has come out of this evil. That medicine man, Mencken, was standing outside looking at the rumpus, smiling to himself, I guess. Well, somebody saw him and yelled, "There's another of those damned Puritans!" And before he could get away, 5 of them had jumped on him and beaten him to a pulp. He certainly deserved it, and it's a good joke on him that they beat him up for being a Puritan.
Priscilla could stand it no more. She rose from her bed, rushed into the room, and faced the 3 Puritans, in the voice of Priscilla Kennicott. But with the words of the medicine man, she scourged them.
A good joke? And is that what you call Puritan gentlemen of God and volcanoes of correct thought snuffle over a good joke? Well, with the highest respect to Professor Dr. Miles Standish, the Puritan hearse hound, and Professor Dr. Elder Brewster, and Plymouth Dr. Crane, I say, bah!
She shrieked this last in their faces and fell lifeless at their feet. She never recovered consciousness. An hour later, she died. An overdose of medicine had been too much for her weak heart.
Poor William, you must be brave. I know you will miss her sorely, but console yourself with the thought that it was for the best. Priscilla has gone where she'll always be happy. She has at last found that bliss which she searched for in vain on earth.
That's right. Yes, William, Priscilla has now found eternal joy.
Heaven, smug saints with ill-fitting halos and imitation wings, singing meaningless hymns which Priscilla had heard countless times before. Sleek, prosaic angels flying aimlessly around, playing scale songs on sickly yellow harps. 3 of the harps badly out of tune, 2 strings missing on another. Moses, a Jew, Methuselah, another Jew, old and unshaven. Priscilla threw herself on a cloud, sobbing.
Oh, dear. Oh, my.
Well now, sister, what seems to be the matter here? She looked up. She saw a sympathetic stranger looking down at her.
Because you know, sister, if you don't like it here, you can always go back any time you want to.
Do you mean to say that I can return to Earth?
You certainly can. I'm sort of a manager here. And wherever you see any particular part of the earth you'd like to live in, you just let me know. And I'll arrange it.
He smiled and was gone. It was 200 years before Priscilla Kennicott definitely decided that she could stand it no longer in heaven. It was another 200 years before she located a desirable place on earth to return to.
she finally selected a small town in the American Northwest, far from the Puritan-tainted Plymouth. A small town in the midst of fields of beautiful waving grain. A small town free from the artificiality of large cities. A small town named Gopher Prairie. She made known her desire to the manager. She said goodbye to a small group of friends who had gathered to see her off. She heard the sound of the eternal harp playing and hymn singing growing gradually fainter and fainter. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she found herself on Main Street in Gopher Prairie. This is a quote from the Heavenly Harp and Trumpet Gazette.
Flash! Mrs. Priscilla Kennicott, one of those popular angels, left these parts last Tuesday for an extended visit to the earth. Mrs. K, as she's known here in heaven, confided to ye editor that she would probably take up her residence in Gopher Prairie, Minnesota. The Harp and Trumpet felicitates the citizens of Gopher Prairie on their acquisition of a charming and up-to-date young matron, whose absence will be keenly regretted by many friends in the heavenly younger married set. Good luck, Priscilla!
Heaven, 5 years later, the monthly meeting of the Celestial Browning Club. Seated in the chair reserved for the guest of honor, the manager. The meeting opens as usual with a reading by Brother Robert Browning of his poem Pippa Passes. The chairman announces, "Today we take up a subject in which I am sure you are all extremely interested. The popular literature of the United States." The members listened to selected extracts from the writings of Gene Stratton Porter, Zane Grey, and Harold Bell Wright. At the conclusion, they applauded, and the manager again bows. "I am sure that we are all glad to hear that things are going so nicely in the United States. And now, in conclusion, Brother Voltaire has requested permission to address us for a few minutes, and I am sure that anything Brother Voltaire has to say will be eminently worthwhile. Brother Voltaire." Brother Voltaire rises and announces that he has listened with interest to the discussion of American literature, and that he too rejoices that all is well in this best of all possible United States, and that he hopes that they will pardon him if he supplements the program by reading a few extracts from another extremely popular American book recently published under the name Main Street. At the next meeting of the Celestial Browning Club, it was unanimously voted that the privilege of the club be denied Brother Voltaire for the period of 1 year, and that the name of Priscilla Kennicott be stricken from the list of non-resident members of heaven.
And now a quote from Josh Billings' Almanac Axioms. To break a mule, commence at his head. In shooting at a deer that looks like a calf, always aim so as to miss it if it is a calf, and to hit it if it is a deer. To get rid of cockroaches, sell your house and lot and flee to the mountains. To pick out a good husband, shut up both eyes, grab hard, and trust in the Lord. There ain't nothing that is a sure cure for laziness, but I have known a second wife to hurry it some. It was Horatio T. Wigbottom's first banquet, and they were making speeches. Everybody was being called on for a speech, and he was in mortal terror, yes, for he had never made a speech in his life. An old-timer at his side cruelly suggested that he get under the table or say a prayer. His name was called, and he got up with fear and trembling and said, "My friends, I never made a speech in my life, and I'm just scared nearly to death. A friend here beside me has suggested two things for me to do: to get under the table or to pray. Well, I couldn't get under the table without observation. And now that I'm on my feet, I can't think of any other prayer to say except one that I used to hear my sweet sister Mary say in the morning when Mother called us. Oh Lord, how I hate to get up.